the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where you can't spell triumph without T-R-U-M-P. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to The Blast Radius. So good to have you with us tonight. Coming up on the Worst People in the Whole Wide World weekly update. British cops start rounding up Jews for wearing Stars of David in public, and there wasn't even a German invasion. The governor of California gets very upset over a picture of a giant penis. The governor of Illinois continues to act like a giant penis. But first, what would happen if all of the world's most evil, malevolent billionaire industrialists threw a nationwide NoKings protest and nobody showed up except Geriatrics and Furries? Well, we got the answer to that question yesterday when what was supposed to be a massive show of woke leftist force descended into a rather bizarre collection of scenes of 87-year-old unreconstructed liberal hippies posing for photos with dudes in giant inflatable lobster costumes. Because nothing says I fear for the future of American democracy like showing up for a protest in a giant inflatable lobster costume. And as for the old-timers, I'm not sure what we should call them, but I've heard a few rather good suggestions, and I'm not sure whether my favorite one is Grantifa or Antifa. But admittedly, it's a tough call. Maybe we will have to take a vote in the chat to settle that matter once and for all. As for the actual Antifa, they were conspicuous by their near-total absence yesterday. Who knows? Maybe they used up all of their allowance money on those fun holidays in Portland and Chicago. President Donald Trump never wanted to pass up a perfectly good opportunity to mercilessly troll a group of people who are begging to be mercilessly trolled. Put up a delicious AI-generated video of himself wearing a crown flying an F-14 Tomcat with King Trump emblazoned on the fuselage. His danger zone plays in the background, and he's dropping loads of raw sewage all over the attendees at the NoKings protest, including the great-grandmother in the wheelchair who is in the middle of regaling the guy in the lobster costume with the story of how she banged 12 dudes in the mud pit at Woodstock, and that was just before Carlos Santana got done playing. Also, she may have eaten the brown acid. But at least she's not going back to the memory care facility empty-handed, because now she's got a t-shirt that says, I had a 48-hour pass from the nursing home and all I got was a selfie with a guy in a lobster costume and this lousy t-shirt. Because nothing says we are on the right side of history and morality and democracy like half-dead geriatric women with walkers and young non-binary they-thems in sparkly rainbow unicorn costumes awkwardly pretending they are just delighted to be spending a Saturday afternoon in each other's company. You know, the organizers of the NoKings protest said they wanted this to be an historic occasion whose effects would ring down through the ages, and in that sense at least, I think they achieved their purpose, because these memes are definitely going to live forever, as if we didn't already have enough mimetic material to last for several lifetimes. But I guess our friends on the left, they are unusually generous that way. They're actually better at comedy than we tend to give them credit for. It's just that the comedy is unintentional, and they are always the unwitting butt of the joke. And speaking of butts, did you see the guy in the giant inflatable penis costume? Because our friends at the White House and the Department of Memes and Mockery, they sure did. And they wasted no time tweeting out that picture with the caption, hey look, Gavin Newsom showed up at the NoKings rally. And Gavin Newsom didn't seem to think that was very funny at all, which is strange since he has spent these past few months trying to restyle himself as some sort of internet comedy slay king. But I guess when he is the butt of the joke, or the giant penis of the joke, as the case may be, all of a sudden he transmogrifies into the woke male hair gel version of Queen Victoria, and it's all he can do to just grumble out, "We're not amused!" Which seems kind of strange, because if the President of the United States thought of me when he saw a picture of a gigantic penis, I think I might be rather flattered. And speaking of big swinging dicks, the United States Marine Corps celebrated its 250th anniversary in Camp Pendleton yesterday, and as I was out mowing the front yard, I got to watch several flights of Black Hawks passing overhead on their way from MCAS Miramar up to Pendleton, flying nice and low, 1,000, 1,500 feet off the ground, low enough so you don't just hear the sound of freedom, but it physically tickles you in your nether regions. But Gavin Newsom, again, was decidedly non-amused by all of it. In fact, he spent about a day and a half wailing and moaning on social media about how totally unacceptable it is that the Department of War ordered the I-5 freeway between San Onofre and Oceanside, you know, the bit of it that passes directly through the middle of Camp Pendleton, to be shut down for a couple of hours yesterday so the Marines, in commemoration of their 250th anniversary, in the presence of the Vice President of the United States, who is also a U.S. Marine, could do a big live fire simulation of an amphibious invasion, except no, that's actually not what happened at all. It was Newsom who ordered the freeway shut down, and he tried to blame it on the Department of War, but the War Department said, nah, that guy's lying. We never asked for any freeway shut down. And they make a fair point, because if you drive on I-5 through Camp Pendleton on any day of the year, there's a significantly non-zero chance you're going to see an amphibious training exercise in progress. Now, If Gavin Newsom was a smart man, or even a slightly less stupid man, he would have just said nothing about any of this. Let's remember, after all, the interstate highway system was built by the federal government for the express purpose of national defense, and the parts of it that run through military installations, the War Department, if they wanted to, could close them to private vehicular traffic at any time, for any reason, for any duration of their choosing. No state governor would have any power to countermand a ruling like that, so when a governor does choose to complain about it, to whine and moan and grumble like a small child who doesn't wish to eat his vegetables, and especially when he is lying out his ass about it and pretends it was the federal government that ordered the shutdown when it was actually he himself that did that just because he wanted something to impotently grandstand about, the only result he is going to achieve is to make himself look like a total douche. But if Gavin Newsom is good at anything, it's making himself look like a douche. And let's not pretend he would have any problem with any of this if it was the exact same commemoration and they were doing the exact same simulated amphibious invasion, but Kamala Harris was the president and the display was being done in the presence of Vice President Tampon Tim Walz. And my God, one shudders to think how different that commemoration might have looked. Probably a lot more rainbow flags and double-handed jazz waving, but the point being, pound for pound, the U.S. Marine Corps is the most capable, most distinguished fighting force in the history of human armed conflict. They only get one 250th anniversary, and if a freeway needs to be shut down for 120 minutes to honor that anniversary at the same installation where 100% of the men were trained who stormed the beaches of Peleliu and Kwajalein and Iwo Jima and Okinawa and 100 other Pacific islands, many thousands of whom paid the last full measure of devotion in the righteous cause of defeating Imperial Japan, then Gavin Newsom can shut his bitchy little mouth. And speaking of bitchy little mouths, J.B. Pritzker still has one of those, and when he's not shoveling buckets of fried chicken into it, there are stupid, ignorant words coming out. J.B. is still very upset that federal agents are coming into his state and enforcing the immigration laws that were duly enacted by the Congress many decades, sometimes centuries ago. You know, if Democrats dislike our immigration laws so much, it seems like they have had ample opportunities during the periods when they have controlled the White House and both houses of Congress to change those laws. But alas, they have never done that. JB now says he wants to prosecute individual ICE agents for unspecified violations of state and local laws. He doesn't go into any detail about what laws or what violations he's talking about, because of course he doesn't. But it's interesting to juxtapose this pose that he's making this week with the fact that last week, the Chicago PD were told to stand down when local terrorist criminals were attacking federal agents, including by shooting guns at them, which would seem to be violative of various state and local laws. So if I have this straight, you want to arrest and prosecute ICE agents for perceived violations of state and local laws, but you refuse to arrest and prosecute other people who very clearly did violate state and local laws because ICE agents were the targets of said violation. And what a wonderfully clear and coherent moral and legal framework in which the governor of Illinois is operating. But at least he has stopped short of telling Jews they are not allowed to enter the city, which means, you know what time it is now. We need to check in once again with our good friends across the pond in the jolly old Islamic Emirate of Britannistan, where not only was a man arrested and taken to jail last week for wearing a Star of David necklace too close to a pro-Hamas rally, you're inflaming community tension, sir, we can't have that. But even more remarkably, even more shamefully, fans of the Israeli soccer club Maccabi Tel Aviv will be barred by the British government from attending their team's upcoming Europa League match at Aston Villa. You may have heard of Aston Villa, one of the oldest and proudest clubs in British soccer, or football, as they call it over there. But you see, Aston Villa's home ground is located in the city of Birmingham. The population of the city of Birmingham, astoundingly, is now over 30% Muslim. So it's been decided that we just can't have any Jews coming into the city to watch their Israeli football team because Birmingham is a Muslim city now. And if any Jews show up to cheer for their football team, they will probably be lovingly killed by the Birmingham locals. And somewhere down in the seventh circle of hell, Mrs. Schickelgruber's little boy must be laughing his ass off right now, wondering why the British wasted so much energy and so many lives repelling his German invasion in 1940, when a mere 85 years later, through the magical power of mass migration, they have achieved just the same sort of Britain that the German National Socialists would have sought to institute had they managed to stage a successful cross-channel invasion during the Second World War. A Britain where Jews are bundled into police vans for the dastardly offense of being too Jewish in public. A Britain where the largest city in the West Midlands has to be closed off from Jews entering it because the government can't guarantee they won't be culturally enriched by the Birmingham locals. And it only took a mere 100 years for Birmingham to get from Peaky Blinders to whatever you call this. Because nothing says we are a tolerant, progressive, multicultural wonderland like your government being so unable to ensure the safety of visiting sports fans that you have to announce you're not even going to bother trying. And so the question would seem to be begged. Why play the game in Birmingham at all? Why not move the damn thing to a neutral site? If you can't guarantee the safety of Maccabees fans, how can you guarantee the safety of their players and coaches? All the woke, progressive messaging in British football over the last 20, 25 years, all the rainbow shoelaces, all the slogans printed on the field about, let's kick out racism, all the public service announcements played on the stadium big screen with players wagging their fingers, reading out scripts about how we don't tolerate hatred and bigotry in British football. Just to wind up with the home ground of one of your country's most prominent teams having to be declared a Jew-free zone? That's where we are now? So what then was the point of all that posturing about tolerance and diversity? Was it all just a big, meaningless load of puffed-up, virtue-signaling bullshit? It would seem that yes. Yes, it was. And with that, my work is done. That's all I've got. This has been the WPWWWWU for the 19th of October, 2025, and I now transmit you into the stern but loving embrace of my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.